Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, cool. Yeah, welcome to day 2 of build, I guess. How has day 2 been going for everyone so far? Good, good, cool, yeah. Like I was introduced, I'm a software engineering manager on the Foundry Observability team. And I'm excited to share with you today how you can run consistent, high quality, and actionable agent observability in Foundry, no matter what agent framework you use or where your agents are running. Okay, quick show of hands. How many of you build or operate agents in production? Okay, cool, some of you. And so keep your hands up if all of the agents, like either your agents or your team agents, are running on the same cloud provider, using the same programming language and same agent framework. Anyone? Okay, I guess one lucky person there. Okay, so what we hear from customers again and again is that the production reality is that big companies, like enterprise companies, they really have this heterogeneous agent setup, right? Like that you mean, like maybe a So maybe a product team, like they picked Foundry's prompt agents because it's easier to iterate on the portal, right? And then a backend team might pick up LangGraph and run it on AWS because LangGraph is the agent framework they are most familiar with. And the third team might have adopted ADK from Google because they are already on GCP or on Gemini, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe someone asks for Copilot SDK as a catch-all because that's a new thing they have recently heard about. And very quickly, you run into this mess that, different agent framework, different hosting stack, different metrics, and different dashboard. And then, like, all of a sudden, maybe like a bad response came up from your agentic system in production. And your VP start to ask scary questions like, oh, which agent is that? Why did the agent return this bad answer? And how do we prevent bad behaviors from happening in the future, right? Today, I'm going to show you how to answer those questions in one place, Foundry Observability. Not by rewriting your agents into one agent framework, but by adopting OpenTelemetry instrumentation with a few lines of code and without changing your existing agent logic. And everything we show in this demo are live and available on Foundry. You can check out the code and reproduce everything we show with the repository we will share at the end of the talk. Let's start with a simple agent before bringing multi-agent, multi-cloud setup. Okay? You guys can see this, right? Okay. So if this is the first time you are seeing this, this is Microsoft Foundry portal, and this is a playground view that allow me to quickly configure and test out my agents, right? And the story here is that, I grew up in Xi'an, a famous tourist destination in China, and I often get asked by friends for travel recommendations. So I went ahead and built a travel expert agent with Foundry's no-code offering called Prompt Agent, right? And what I did is that I picked a model for my agent. I gave it some system prompt, and it can be even like multi-language if you want. And the secret sauce here is that I have this kind of travel notes in PDF file, right, with kind of even pictures and different links and everything. I uploaded it to the Foundry here as an index so that my agent can access that travel notes when it needs to. Okay? And I can send a question here. For example, plan a 3-day trip in Xi'an for 2 people, focus on history and food. You can see the agent started to return detailed itinerary, which shouldn't be a surprise today, right? It calls out kind of famous places to visit, again in multi-languages, and also restaurant recommendations. Right, we can take a closer look here. Again, like kind of 3-day, like day-by-day plan, and like with all the details, calling out like interesting places, right? But again, like we're in 2026, this shouldn't be a surprise, right? What's more interesting is that I can go to the traces view to see like how the agent was able to get to that answer, right? Here is a list of all the previous conversations I've had with this agent. And like there are different dimensions you can see here, like token cost, token in, token out, maybe estimated cost, right? And I can do sort and filtering if I want to. And maybe we can also like dig into a specific trace. Okay. Let's try a different one. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. And Foundry provides also this like clear view to allow me to understand the behavior of my agent, right? I can even maximize it a little bit. At the upper right corner, it's a little bit small, but I think these are key metrics about this conversation, like number of spans, number of chat calls, number of tool calls, latency, and token consumption, right? So it's very clear. Those are the key metrics. And if you look at this tree view, everything is rooted under a single invoke agent span that has the system message, the input from the customer, and the output from the agent. And following that is a execute tool span that the agent uses to look up my travel nodes, right? If we take a closer look at the metadata tab here, we'll be able to see like, oh, this is a query the agent used to retrieve content from my PDF file, right? And this is like the final answer the tool was able to retrieve to give back to the agent. This is kind of a classic RAG pattern, if you guys have heard about that. And in case, like if the agent running into any hallucination problem or groundedness problem, this is likely where I will start my debugging from. And eventually, everything is fed into an LLM for the final answer. You can see that we have a replay button here that I can choose the speed. If I do this, I see like how the agent is actually being executed. And if I go to the user view, I can even experience what an end user would see from this agent, right? Pretty cool. Okay, yeah, this really gives me a very clear view to help me to deeply understand my agent behavior and debug issues when I need to, right? And at this point, you might be wondering, does this only come with Foundry native agents? What about my agents running somewhere else, right? Do I get the same experience? To answer that question, let me bring in my colleague Nagkumar.
Hi.
To talk about that.
Hi, I'm Nagkumar, and what I did along with Hanchi was to build a similar travel agent about the place that I'm from, Bangalore, and I call it the Bangalore Travel Agent. Unlike Hanchi's agent, mine runs on GCP using the Google's ADK, and after registering it on the Foundry as an external agent, we'll get to see the same rich trace experience that you saw earlier. So this is my trace experience screen, and I can click on a screen, on a trace, and then look at the responses. But while we do that, I want to also send a request to my GCP agent via curl. So you can see it's running on run.app, which is GCP. And then we can take a look at the response as soon as it's up here.
Yeah, so that we know this is a real agent running on GCP, right? We're not like faking anything. Yeah, I guess it will take a little bit to come back because of network. Okay, here it comes back. Yeah, you can see the city there, and again, like this is a real agent running on GCP, right? We were able to send an HTTP request and get this response back. And to make this even more interesting, because Nagkumar and I both live in Seattle currently, so we even built a third agent for Seattle travel tips, and we have it using the land graph and running on AWS.
Yeah, so I'm doing the same thing, sending out a call to my agent on AWS with a question about Seattle. And while this is running, I'll explain the whole magic behind it. We also built another agent which acts as an orchestrator, and that agent was built with Microsoft is deployed on the Foundry as hosted agent and uses our Microsoft agent framework. The way it works is it routes intelligently based on the city that you ask it to, and then all of them would emit OpenTelemetry traces. We can, here's the response for the Seattle agent, and we can jump into showcasing how the trace looks like.
That sounds great. Let's do that.
So this is the same agent that I told you about, the orchestrator that we have.
This is the one that will invoke multiple agents across multiple clouds, right?
Yep, and if you see my message, I'm asking about Seattle, Bangalore, and Lisbon. Lisbon's not one of the countries that we built an agent for, so there is a Copilot SDK which acts as a fallback for cities that we don't have data about or we don't have like a specialized agent for. While this is running, I can head on over to the Traces tab and show you an open trace from earlier. So this was the invoke agent span. Earlier, I asked it about like Seattle and Berlin, and the city router kind of decided to route this to like the Bangalore and the Seattle agent. And then you can see it invoked the Seattle specialist to get all the details about Seattle, and then goes back into the Copilot fallback for our Berlin related data.
Yeah, that is super cool. And to recap, right? So here is a bird's eye view of what has just happened. It's actually the next slide, I think. Yeah. So what we saw from the playground is that a user asked a question to the orchestrator, and the orchestrator runs in a Foundry hosted agent that's kind of the pro code agent that will talk a little bit more like in a little bit, right? But that agent serves as the orchestrator and route the question to the right sub-agent that is the specialist of that specific city. And you can see that each sub-agent is running on a different cloud, running with different agent framework, but because of all of them are emitting OpenTelemetry traces, Foundry Observability was able to stitch together the end-to-end execution and put everything in one unified trace. And that's why, like, even though they are running across multiple clouds, it feels like everything is in one system. Okay. Yeah, now let's talk about the key ingredients that made this possible. Okay, first is Microsoft's agent platform. We showcase like a Foundry agent, Foundry prompt agent, right? That's the no-code agent I demoed at the beginning of the talk. And Foundry also has like hosted agents. That's our orchestrator agent. That's called pro code. You submit your code with your container to Foundry, and Foundry helps you to manage that and run your code, right? So that you have full control of the agent behavior. And Foundry's hosted agent is what really shines for enterprise scenarios because it has enterprise-grade VM isolation. It has agent identity that from on-tree that really guarantees security, and it has like key features like long-running operation routines, right? That are all like very nice features for enterprise customers. But like pro code or no code, I think it's up to you. But like Foundry got you covered. Like you can choose either one that fits your needs, right? And once you have that, you can have your agent built in GitHub with code and prompt checked into GitHub, right? You can run your agent in Foundry with built-in observability evaluation and optimization. And once you are ready, you can distribute your agents to users on M365.
The second ingredient is OpenTelemetry's GenAI semantic conventions. Think of this as a common telemetry schema across frameworks. Whether it's the Foundry prompt agent, a LangGraph app, or an ADK service, they emit spans with consistent attributes for agent names, model calls, and key events. That consistency gives you a strong compatibility with downstream observability and evaluation features on Microsoft Foundry. Microsoft heavily contributes to the standards, and we actively add new scenarios to support.
Yeah, that sounds great. Kumar, can you show us what code change did you need to make to adopt OpenTelemetry instrumentation?
So Microsoft OpenTelemetry distro is the unified SDK that can instrument most agent frameworks in multiple programming languages. Foundry native agents have Microsoft OpenTelemetry distro instrumentation built in, so I didn't have to make any code changes. But for agents outside of Foundry, the distro supports auto instrumentation, and it's just a few lines of initialization code to set up the SDK. Let me hop on over to VS Code. So this is my agent, and all I have to do is say use OpenTelemetry and enable using it with Azure Monitor and pass the Azure Monitor connection string, tell it what framework I'm using, and give it the agent ID. This is the same agent ID that I used to register the agent on Foundry, so it can pull up the traces and correlate them.
Yeah, great. And one thing to call out here is that Foundry Observability is powered by Azure Monitor and Azure Application Insights, right? And all of Foundry's traces are stored in Azure Monitor. So if you are an existing Azure Monitor users, maybe for like other part of your non-agentic workflows and architecture, you can keep using existing Azure Monitor features that you might be already familiar with. Cool. Now that we were seeing unified traces from all three clouds, let's talk about why this matters in production, right? Because seeing all the traces is great, but the real value is operational. That you want to debug issues and monitor patterns and evaluate quality in one workflow. So traces are only useful if they can answer questions quickly, right, in production. And for example, like questions people may want to ask in the demo setup we had is, did the routing agent route the question to the right sub-agent, right? Did the retrieval return like weak context that might have caused hallucination problem? Or maybe like did the latency come from a cold start, network, slow network, or the model itself? And over time, we want to probably monitor if there's any trend that the agent behavior is shifting.
We touched base on debuggability earlier in the talk. Let me show you how the monitor tab works. Here you can see the live traffic patterns, latency distribution, and a few evaluation results. One of the interesting things is the estimated cost, the total token usage, the type of evaluations which ran on the agent, scheduled evals, there were a few, and then scheduled red teams as well. If we scroll down, you can see some operational metrics. And one of the things I noticed is the error rate went up earlier. I should probably get that checked out. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see more scheduled evaluation results and what the human evaluator did on this as well. Yeah, one of the tool call successes also went down recently. I guess we should take a look at it soon.
Yeah. Okay, now let's take a look at the fleet wheel.
On the operate tab, you can look at all your agents in a particular Foundry project and take a look at every thing that pops up. One of the things you can see is our active alerts. Foundry, if you have an agent on Foundry, by default you have a security workflow running, so you get alerts on things like malicious URLs were detected or a jailbreak attempt was made on your prompt and things like that. You can also set up alerts on evaluation results. So let's say your agent stops working the way it's supposed to do, then you can be alerted on it. And you can see things like agent success rate, agent volume, which was the most used volume agent over time, and so on.
Yeah, that's very cool. I definitely feel more confident in production operations with those monitor views. Now maybe let's talk about evaluation.
Yeah, so for evaluations, let me pull up some code that I wrote. You can set up evaluations on traces using the Foundry project client and select what evaluator you want to add into the testing criteria. Here I have intent resolution evaluator, and then we run this on a particular agent ID. So once you set this up and create an eval, you get to see eval results, which kind of look like this. So this one ran a bunch of different metrics, and I can see that there was some trace which didn't work well. So I'll click on this trace, and we'll be directly taken into the trace view of that particular agent. And once you click on it, you'll be able to identify what went wrong. The first thing that I want to see is, oh, the user's intent was to compare Bengaluru and Barcelona for an after-work evening and keeping the plan concise. But when I see the eval results, which show up here, and the task adherence was where we saw the failure. So the user asked for a concise comparison, but the response material did not cover both cities, and hence the task adherence came out to be a failure. Let's see what the response was. Well, yeah, there is no comparison. There is description about both of them. I guess the evaluator was looking for a table.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, so the loop we want to draw here is very simple, right? Like instrument your code with OpenTelemetry, debug, evaluate, and optimize in production with live traffic, and then like gain fleet level visibility if you want to manage and control them. And everything are done on like one observability plane. Okay. Cool. And like there are like so many great Foundry features that we cannot cover due to like time constraints in this session, but want to call out on them so that you guys can check on them later. So rubric evaluators like kind of creates customized evaluation plan tailored to your agent, right? So that solves your evaluation cold start problem. Agent optimization improves your agent by fine-tuning your system prompt, trying out different models, and maybe leveraging like a few new tools. For customers who want to leverage or opt in for A365, Foundry natively supports that. And as much as we like and support and recommend OpenTelemetry's generative AI semantic conventions, we understand like some customers might be using another trace format today and may not be easy for them to switch. That's why we want to meet customers where they are. So we support these two popular frameworks, popular format, OpenInference and OpenTelemetry for like trace viewing and trace evaluation.
Exactly. We recommend you to check out recordings of other Foundry sessions or visit Foundry's public documentation. Here's a QR code that connects you to our repo with all our agents that we had showcased earlier.
Yeah, that's great. And we are really proud of the breadth and depth of what Foundry has to offer to help you to run consistent, high quality, and actionable agent observability, right? And build what you want, run it where you need, and observe it all in one place. Any agent, any cloud, one observability plane. Thank you.